Okay, can you guys see my screen? Can someone just post in?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, fabulous. Thank you guys. So, welcome to today's class. Today's focus is transforming the runaway money archetype into the grounded seeker. All right, so if you've just joined, my name is Vangile, and I'm going to be presenting to you today. I'm going to be teaching you, and I am also the author of What's Your Money Personality. Please, can I just get my book? Today, I am sort of organized because I made sure that everything was done for the class, but it's a new Airbnb, so with every new space, I need like a few minutes. Okay, so understanding the the overview of the runaway archetype, right? Who is the runaway? So the last few weeks, let me just recap. So week one, we looked at family dynamics around money. Week two, we looked at the role of oppression when it comes to our relationship with money, right? The different forms of oppression, how they then shaped Black families in different parts of the world. Then week three, we ended up looking at the sweet one archetype and how the sweet one archetype becomes the boundaried one. Then last week, Wednesday, because I had a speaking engagement on Thursday, we looked at the destroyer archetype and how the destroyer becomes the renovator. Today, in this book, right, which we're looking at chapter, which one is it? Chapter 9 and chapter 15 of What's Your Money Personality. So hope you guys can see the book, right? So we are looking at the runaway archetype, and we're also looking at how the runaway archetype becomes the grounded seeker. So I'm going to start off by reading, as usual, what the archetype is, and then we're going to go more in depth into the archetype. As usual, you guys are invited to share in the chat section, to share what comes up for you if you resonate with anything, right? So I start off chapter 9 by saying this is my secondary archetype, because remember that my primary archetype is a destroyer, right? This is my secondary archetype. Runaways are adults who have learned how to escape from situations. They're probably scared of confrontation and easily overwhelmed by their emotions or anything that requires them to fully drop into their bodies. So, in a nutshell, the runaway archetype has learned to respond to trauma predominantly by going into the flight response. Remember that when we started off in part one of these masterclasses, I shared that there are four predominant ways of responding to trauma. And then in the book, I introduced the fifth way, right? So we can either go into fight mode, which is where we start fighting everyone, and that's what the destroyer does. We can go into flight mode. So we interchange with all these, right? With all these ways of responding to trauma. I should say that. But we all tend to have a predominant way, just like you have a predominant thing that is so comfortable for you, right? So you go into fight mode where you just fight, right? If you saw a lion in the bush, you would fight and deal with it that way. Or you may be someone that has learned to deal with trauma by going mainly into flight mode, right? So if you go into flight mode, then you're running away, right? You see the lion, you run. Then the other one that most of us do is we also go into freeze mode. So you see the lion and you freeze, right? Or you see what's happening in your bank account and you freeze and you can't take action. Then we also go into fawn mode, which is more people-pleasing mode, right? You see the lion, instead of running, fighting, freezing, you decide to befriend the lion and get eaten anyway, right? You're like, I'm going to be nice to the lion. I'm going to be the one that's different, right? And then the other one that I talk about is force mode. So in the book, I introduce another way, which is we go into control mode, we go into force mode. So when you see the lion, instead of doing any of these other things, you go, I am going to control the lion, I'm going to build cages, and I'm going to build zoos, and I am going to be the one that's in control of the lion and control of the fear, and I'm going to think that I can master the lion regardless, right? So that's how most of us deal with trauma. Now, imagine in all these situations, instead of the lion, I love using like other analogies, right? Because it's so much easier for people and less triggering. But in all the ways that I've described us dealing with trauma, you are with the lion. Now substitute money into that, right? So instead of dealing with money with the runaway, you're actually running away from money because money is scary. So in this example, money is the lion, right? So most of us learned, some of us, most of us, so some of us who are the runaway archetype learn to deal with money by running away from money, by avoiding money and avoiding responsibilities, right? We are the people, those are the people that would usually try to positively bypass everything. Oh, I'm running out of money. Oh, it's fine. I have more than enough money. Like, I can't say anything negative about how I feel about money. And also, most people in this archetype also don't feel into their bodies. They run away from everything, not just money. When things get uncomfortable, you learn to deal with uncomfortable situations by mainly running. You just run. And sometimes you actually physically run. You're actually physically always on the road, always traveling. So ironic because I just arrived today and I'm like, oh, I've been traveling, right? So that is the runaway archetype. So let's look at the key behavioral patterns of the runaway archetype. So obviously, the runaway tends to go into flight mode. They have a tendency to flee from challenging situations as a coping mechanism. Before we understand why the runaway goes into flight mode, it is very, very important for us to understand why the runaway was born into a family, right? So I'm going to read it from the book because, again, I'm very, very succinct in the book. So the runaway, one of the things that I say in the book, like, where do I say this? May have to just read it out loud. Okay, so here it is. The role in page 144, I say the role of the runaway is to metabolize the unseen and unprocessed trauma in the family. Runaways absorb the trauma and try to energetically process it for everyone so that it doesn't weigh family members down. They're extremely empathetic because as children, they simply did not have the resources to process the trauma they felt and absorbed and were easily overwhelmed by it. So the reason why the runaway goes into flight response, remember we spoke about the allostatic load, especially in part 2 of the masterclasses, how you get we all have a different capacity to deal. And when you have a high allostatic load, that like you are reaching your cap, you have a lot to deal with. And just like a machine, it's a very, very hard for you to keep processing.
When I was born, and then for a few years I stayed with my aunt. And then, I stayed with most of my aunt.
Who's online? Hello? Who just... Okay, I'm literally kicking you out. Sorry. It's just, yeah. So guys, please mute yourselves. Sorry, I ended up going through all that. So with the flight response, so what the runaway, when we have a high allostatic load, it means that we have too much to process and it causes wear and tear on the body, right? So you're feeling everybody's stuff. So with the runaway money archetype and the runaway archetype in general, they are born into a family to help a family process trauma. Remember, the destroyer's role is they come into a family and they go, this is not working. The old way isn't working. For us to be able to move forward, we need to do things differently. And then they start mirroring the family trauma and they show it to you in black and white. The runaway's role then is to then step in, right? So the sweet one would be like, oh my gosh, the destroyer has completely antagonized us and they've triggered us. So let's come together and be the glue in the family. And then what would happen is that the runaway comes in and just through being, because they are empathic, they can sense the trauma in the family, and then they start to metabolize it through their bodies, through energetically as well, the way they maneuver in a family, right? So often the runaways are very sensitive. You may know them and you may feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so sensitive in the family, but I'm misunderstood. So in the same way as the destroyer, they may feel completely like, I'm different from these people, and I don't quite fit in or I feel everybody's stuff and I don't know why I'm so angry, why I'm feeling all of these things. But unlike the destroyer, they don't take it and shove it back in your face and say, here, it's yours to deal with. Their role is to basically see what's happening and then they start to metabolize it. Here's where the problem comes in. Most families look at what the destroyer is bringing up, and obviously automatically the adults, other people, are supposed to do their work, and the runaway, as small children often they're supposed to deal with their trauma themselves, right? And then like the adults are also supposed to help them process what they are seeing with the destroyer, what the destroyer has highlighted. And then the adults are also supposed to do their inner work. But what we now have and what we're experiencing is a lot of adults that do not do their own trauma work, right? They don't reflect, they don't do a lot of things. So within the family, the destroyer keeps highlighting things. It becomes an issue. They become the black sheep of the family. Nobody listens to them. They are being scapegoated, but the trauma is still there. So instead of the family dealing with the trauma that the destroyer unearths, the family scapegoats the destroyer, turns them into the black sheep in the family. The trauma remains just there, sitting. Where's it supposed to go? It's in people's energy sphere, people's bodies. It's like people are sensing it, but they don't have the language for it. The runaway senses it and feel it on a deep empathic level, right? They can sense when people are feeling anxious. They can sense when mom and dad are not like together, when they're just smiling and pretending. They can sense when mom is dealing with the budget, but she's not 100%. They are that tuned in. They are those children. But then it becomes too overwhelming for them to be in their bodies because they are still children. They don't know what to do with all these things that they are feeling and sensing, and the adults around them don't want to deal with them and process them. And yet every day they come home and they sense the same thing. So even if everything looks harmonious in the family, there's no major fights, there's no arguments, mom is not complaining about money. She's doing positive affirmations. Dad seems to be smiling. The parents seem to be getting along. The runaway is feeling the deep underbelly of things that like the adults and the other, and maybe even the other children don't want to feel and sense and acknowledge. So they then get overwhelmed. Their allostatic load goes all the way up, and it becomes very, very uncomfortable for them to be in their bodies. They then learn to leave their bodies, to go into flight mode and not flee just situations, but flee their bodies. The runaway then becomes most of the time the adult who's dissociated, who will say to you, like I have a lot of clients when they come to me and they're like, I don't know what I'm feeling. What do you mean, what am I feeling? They learn to dissociate because they felt too much and they didn't have the resources to be able to process what it is that they felt. But so anything that requires them to feel or causes challenge or discomfort because they never got the tools and they never got the support that they needed from the adults around them who were supposed to be doing their own work and making it easier on their nervous systems, they start to run away from situations. They'll also have a hard time remembering their memories, right? So you'll be like in your 20s, 30s, and you'll be like, I don't remember anything before like I was like 18. A lot of that is just you just learn to dissociate when things were happening, and you just learn to leave your body, right? So unfortunately, this is a pattern that they doesn't just stop with family dynamics, doesn't just stop with the relationship aspect of the family and discomfort. It also goes way into our relationship with money. So when things get very, very hard, you avoid money, right? So you will go into a state where like you just completely run away from money. So when your bills show up, you pretend that the bills didn't show up, or you run towards instantly doing positive affirmations. You refuse to think about anything negative. It sounds very attractive never to have to say the words debt, right? Because if I say debt, then I have to deal with debt, and that's bad juju, bad energy. So most runaways really cling to positive psychology, especially in terms of like affirmations, visualization. They're very, very scared to drop into the body. Again, because of number 3, dissociation from self and body. So a lot of times they externalize their security because the body doesn't feel safe, since trauma is carried in the body, as we talked about in part 1 of these masterclasses. Guys, part 1 is in the recordings. Go back, look at it, find the recordings. They're there. If you go to the link and you go to previous emails, you'll find all the links to all the recordings. So if you need a refresher of the basics, definitely go back there. So when we don't feel safe in our bodies, what do? You leave your body, because when you don't feel safe in situations, what do? You have a trauma response. You're either going to freeze mode, flight mode, fight mode, all of those things. So what the runaway learn to do because of the flight response is they learn to run. Right? So they leave their bodies, and instead of seeking safety inside their bodies, their very first home, they seek safety and comfort through alcohol, through drugs, getting high, through parties, through travel, through everything, just running as far away as possible from everything. So they are running away from their unresolved trauma, right? So the point, as much as possible, the runaway is running away from having to feel, having to deal with discomfort. So definitely looking at your bank account as a runaway is a no-no, because that requires you to be present with the discomfort. And remember, once you allow yourself to feel a little bit intuitively as a runaway, it means it can open up the plug to feel everything else. So they also use TV a lot. Television is a way of escaping. So like a lot of running away. So, and I remember for me realizing this when I started my healing journey, that I used to read a lot in my teens. And everybody used to praise me for that. I was always reading horror, sci-fi. And the interesting thing is I wanted only horror and sci-fi. Anything that brought me back to reality, like autobiographies, was a no-no for me. So it had to be horror, sci-fi, and some romances. It had to be as completely different from reality as humanly possible. Nothing wrong with that, by the way. I'm still an avid sci-fi reader. I don't read horror as much anymore, but avid sci-fi reader, avid sci-fi watcher. I rarely watch any TV shows that are not sci-fi, right? But my whole point was I had this aha moment when I started doing my work, that I used to read not so much because I loved reading. I used to read because I was trying to escape. I was trying to get into another world and just like have a different life experience. And I was using books as a way to escape. And thank God for that, because I mean, now I'm a writer, right? I fell in love with reading. I fell in love with writing, but something really interesting happened. I still read the same genre often, right? Like I said, I don't read horror, but I'm definitely a sci-fi fantasy person. Like I read tremendously still. But now I can actually read personal development. I mean, I write things on money. I can read nonfiction. It no longer stops me. So when I started healing and getting into my body, I was able to continue my love of reading, but expand my I don't know, like expand all the things that I read, if that makes sense, because I was no longer reading for escapism. I was reading because I genuinely love reading. I wasn't just reading just to not feel into my body and be in my head. When I started allowing myself to feel into my head, I started to read vastly and I started to really explore the world vastly. I was same with travel. I still travel tremendously right now, right? But before, when I was traveling, the entire focus of my traveling was to run away, to not be home, to not have to deal with everyone's stuff at home, right? Because I was feeling it and I didn't have the language to say, this is what I'm feeling. And I didn't understand what was going on with my body. Whenever I was home, my money would go absolutely crazy. I would go absolutely haywire. It would be like, I couldn't meditate. I couldn't sit down. I couldn't do any of the things that I did because my body didn't feel safe. And I didn't understand what it was that I was sensing until I started realizing that, wait, I am sensing people's stuff and I can actually use that, right? In my healing work, I could use it with my family. It's how I started doing family retreats and I could start using that to shift family dynamics and to really create beautiful family dynamics. But as a child, you don't know that, so it overwhelms you. So we will talk about how when you become the grounded seeker, just like with all the other archetypes, you can start to change your family dynamics because each archetype has its own unique gifts and they can use those gifts in beautiful ways to build wealth, right? And to change how they relationship with people and also family members. Oh, and another thing, honestly, if you are a runaway and then you're in relationships with certain types of people, just be very, very aware because you're sensing all that stuff, right? So that's why it's key to do your own work. So what are the core wounds of the runaway, given all that I've shared, right? So one of the core wounds of the runaway is feelings of unsafety. Runaways feel deeply insecure, right? And the insecurity comes from them not being able to feel safe in their bodies. And because of that, they always use money, like they constantly escaping to something, right? And that often costs money. Let's be honest, guys, travels cost money. Like part of the reason I was in debt was I was traveling a lot and extensively. So, because you're always looking for the next best thing, you're not thinking, can I be present here for like 3-4 months, right? And I still have that capacity within me because we don't always operate from our golden archetype. So I do have moments when, like, even now on my travels, where life does kind of, it almost seems like I'm in a whirlwind of life and it's kind of like escaping me, where I can easily, without blinking, find myself doing 10 countries in like 5 months, you know? But usually when I am now, the way that I operate is like I'm traveling not to escape. So I have no problems being in a country for like 6 months, a year. And that's not to say that everyone that travels one weekend in the next country, the next weekend in the next country is a runaway or feels unsafe, right? It's different for everyone. For me, that's when I know that, oh my gosh, I'm usually escaping because I'm not taking the moment to want to sit down and be still and feel what I'm feeling. And a huge part of that is because when you're out on the road and you're traveling, out there is so exciting. The next thing is always the most exciting because, wow, I've just landed in a new country. It's a new language. I'm trying to figure out, where do I get electricity? Where do I get this? It's all that busyness. So some people, they don't travel, but they are busy, 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 and you're not that productive. And that's the runaway. So you're like, you do everything. And one of the ways that you will know that is when it comes to money, most runaways, when they are definitely the runaway archetype before they become the grounded seeker, they will focus on busyness versus actual income producing work, right? So instead of selling directly to a client, they will be like, oh, I'm gonna go do ABCD because it's so much better than having to deal with what is uncomfortable, which is maybe the selling and showing up and talking about pricing and talking about your work, right? So you end up just running away. So safety is a huge thing. It's also why I focus so much on safety in the Money Magic course, right? And I'm sure some people remember that, like Honey and I, my sister and I, did a whole lesson during COVID where we did breath work and long hours of EFT tapping around safety so that people can just stay grounded in their bodies. So one of the things I say in the book in page 153, I say it should be noted that if the runaway feels unsafe with money or associates money with unsafety, they may create emergencies in order to get rid of money or savings until they return to their money set point, because that set point gives them a sense of safety, even if it means always being in overdraft or zero in their bank account. So safety can also be the runaway keeping themselves in situations that are situations of struggle financially, right? Or even unsafe situations when it comes to relationships. Because, well, even though I feel unsafe, this is what my nervous system is used to. So this is where I'm going to stay because it doesn't feel safe, right? So it may also, because we don't feel safe in the body, making more money may also feel unsafe. So that's why you manifest emergencies when you have more money. You find a way to get rid of money as possible. The other thing to note with runaway is also when they feel unsafe in work environments, because they are just like the sweet one, they are conflict avoidant. But remember, the sweet one's root cause of conflict avoidance, and this is why it's so important to understand your archetype and understand the root cause. Because if you are doing unsafe work around feeling unsafe, and that's why and your reason for avoiding conflict is the similar reason as the sweet one, the sweet ones, then you're not gonna have the same. It may take a while for you to get that breakthrough, right? So often the sweet one's the reason for conflict avoidance is just to be accepted. They want to be liked, they want to be loved, they don't want to ruffle feathers, they want to be seen as sweet. So their thing is like validation. The runaway literally avoids conflict because it feels unsafe in the body. They haven't learned how to hold anything that feels unsafe. So if they are in a work environment that feels even slightly uncomfortable, they will run, they will change jobs. And that makes it hard for them to build up, this core wound makes it hard for them to build their careers. Because if every time something happens, you just run, then it's hard to build your resume, right? And they may change industries altogether. So when in 2010, I was going through the worst of my money drama and money issues, I think I started about 4 different companies, right? I started and shut down 4 different companies, right? I could not, like, I was really good at having great, brilliant ideas, but because I didn't know how to stay with the discomfort, I didn't know how to stay with challenge in any challenging situation because my nervous system couldn't hold it. I hadn't done the nervous system work to increase nervous system capacity, right? And to be able to be resilient and to be able to support myself through anything that felt uncomfortable. I would always run. That meant that I never really got the real skills that I needed, and I never ever really became an entrepreneur until I started Wealthy Money, right? And like from Wealthy Money, I was able to stay, and I've stayed for like since 2017 full time, right? And from that's how I was able to learn more about building an income, I'd already paid off my debt, right? But building income in a business, increasing income, all of that. And also the more I did my work, even pre-2017, I was then able to stay from 2011 up until 2014 with paying off debt, even when it felt uncomfortable, right? I could call the creditors. I stopped running from things that felt uncomfortable, and I was able to slowly hold the discomfort. And I find that so, so important. Most of us are unable to hold and sit with the tension. And when you're in that state of operating from constant flight mode because you're trying to protect yourself from feeling and having to do all of the work. You're always trying to you're chasing pleasure, but that means that you're always going on to the next thing. So credit card bills are piling up over there. I don't want to look at it. Mortgage is due. I don't want to look at it. I have to pretend it's not happening, right? So that I can continue to exist. But the changes come from being able to hold that, right? From being able to sit with it, no matter how uncomfortable it feels. The other thing with the feelings of unsafety is that we look for short-term solutions. We get drawn into, oh, this is going to be a quickie. Like if you do this within 6 months, you don't have to do any of the inner work. You don't even have to sit with trauma, any of that. You'll be fine. You'll have your breakthrough. The amount of people that come to me and they just like, oh, you talk too much about trauma. Oh, we don't want to hear about this. Tell me how I get to directly jump to the breakthrough, right? Oftentimes it's coming from, I don't want to have to feel the discomfort. I don't want to have to do the challenging work. I don't want to have to sit with my bank account. I don't want to have to list my debt. Just skip the discomfort. I don't want to have to sit with it and move me to the good stuff, right? And then the next core wound is the feeling of powerlessness. So there is a direct link. Research shows, so in page 153 of the book, I shared that a study by Booth et al. In 2012 explored the link between neighborhood safety and mental distress and found that the more unsafe a person felt in their neighborhood, the more powerless and distrusting and alone they felt. So when we feel unsafe in our bodies, we are feeling more and more powerless, right? Because literally it's like you do not know how to hold power in your body, right? And feeling powerful and feeling powerless are actual feelings that you can feel in the body, right? So one of the things that I say in the book is there's a high probability that we learn to feel powerless and that our inner child still carries that feeling of powerlessness. So when we are looking, if you are in the runaway archetype, and this for me was very, very true, right? When I was operating predominantly, again, we are always going to be interchanging between the shadow and the golden archetype, but with healing, we're striving to work and operate more from the golden archetype, but we will never ever get there 100% because we are human, right? All that we can strive for is to be self-aware and aware that we are now in the runaway archetype, right? So often when certain things happen financially, the runaway archetype will sometimes feel powerless financially, right? Oh, maybe you overspend money, you lose money on something, and then you instantly, instead of feeling like I can transcend the situation, I can turn it around, because it doesn't feel safe, and to feel powerful often requires a sense of safety, then you will, although the research says always requires a sense of safety, right? What will often happen is that the runaway will feel powerless and will feel overpowered by their financial situation. So they'll look at the debt, they'll look at how little they earn, and instead of going, I can change this, I've got the power to change this, they'll feel like they have no power. They cannot change this. They cannot, that the debt is bigger than them, right? Oh, I'm looking at my finances, this financial situation and the issues with it. It is beyond me. It's bigger than me, right? And I often felt like that. But for me to be able to change my relationship with money and to get out of debt and become debt-free, I had to heal this feeling of powerlessness. But before I could even heal the feeling of powerlessness, I had to first focus on feeling safe within my body. So I had to increase that feeling of safety within my body and be able to hold it. And then I could then feel like, okay, looking at my finances is not bad. Being $60,000 in debt is not bad. Or, oh, wow, I'm only making like just $1,000 a month in my business. Then how do I then change that so that I increase my income and I start paying off my debt? And often this will manifest as physical symptoms in the body. So when we feel unsafe in the body, it's going to have a huge impact on us in the womb, right? We'll struggle to feel at home within our own bodies, which I've already talked about, right? And we will struggle to also remember our past because the body holds memories. So often the body will do something extreme to get us to remember, right? We may start struggling with womb stuff. We may have like an ache that never goes away, all sorts of things because the body's trying to get your attention and bring you home, right? So one of the things that I say again in page 153, I say they struggle to feel at home within their bodies or feel the power that their wombs or solar plexus holds, which then impacts on their ability to bring their vision to life. And that's by Lynch 2011, right? So Margaret Lynch talks a lot about that like a lot, especially for women, a lot, the womb is our seat of our power, is right? Is the seat of our power. So if most of us are not even in the body. Forget even feeling the womb. Like, what does your womb want? How can you tell when your womb starts to have pains? Can you tell when your womb is happy? What is that? So most of us are so completely disconnected from the body, we can't even feel what is happening at a physical level, at a body level, because it's so unsafe. So it's also not healthy, right? So going the way that runaways, myself included, operate has an impact on the body. So for me, the way that showed up was tailbone pain, digestive issues that just never seemed to end. Like at some point, I was not able, like even though I was vegan, I wasn't able to eat lentils, red lentils, brown lentils, green lentils. I couldn't eat oats. I could barely eat white rice. There were just so many things that I couldn't eat. Like, forget gluten. I was gluten intolerant. I couldn't eat bread, all of those things. When I started doing the safety work and coming into my body and really doing a lot of the somatic work that I teach in the Money Magic course in particular, wow, did my digestive system change, right? Things started to really shift. I was like, I couldn't drink wine. Like, I just couldn't have a lot of things, right? Because my body was constantly trying to get me to feel something. And my digestion, and obviously because I wasn't in the body, I was struggling to digest actual events and process events, memories, emotions. So I was constantly in pain, right? My digestion couldn't really do, like my small and large intestines couldn't really be processing emotion and at the same time, like digesting food. So even though right now, like, I mean, I've done a really good job, I'd like to say, with my digestive system, but like it's always like a work in progress because things do take time. But honestly, I am no longer gluten intolerant. I've been eating pasta, bread, like everything the last few days, everything. I just had a burger, like a vegan burger today that was on a bun with bread. Like I've just been going ham. Like I had tons of lentils yesterday. I had both red and brown lentils for lunch, right? So it's like a huge shift. And that all started by dropping into the body and doing the work of the body. So we just spoke about the physical consequences of avoidance, right? But a huge consequence of avoiding our finances and going into flight mode is that we find out like runaways can easily find themselves in cycles of debt, right? Because, and this is so common for most runaways. What I have found, and it's very, very true for most of the other archetypes that do not have a secondary archetype of the runaway, is that they can pay off debt but not repeat the cycles of debt, right? But for runaways, we have to be careful, guys. So if this is your archetype, we do have that tendency, runaways and the eternal child, definitely. The destroyer as well, but the destroyer creates cycles of debt because they are busy innovating and doing their own thing, right? But for the runaway, it's often because they're running away. So they'll create the debt, and as soon as they pay it off, they may feel like, oh, I don't want to look at this debt again, or it's so uncomfortable to be expanding. I've now gone beyond my money set point. So then they, instead of continuing to sit with the discomfort and working on increasing their set point, most runaways can default back to their flight mode and say, oh, this is too uncomfortable, so I'm just going to default straight back into what I know, and then they recreate the cycle of debt, right? Default into old habits of running away and escaping and wanting short-term solutions. Because so just being aware of this is very important. So we're going to share, like in another slide, how do you make sure that you don't keep defaulting to old habits as the runaway? Because it's really, really challenging, especially if a lot of the work, as I know with my work, a lot of it is somatic, which means that my work is experiential. It goes into the body. I'm not really so much interested in this is your budget and using self-discipline and making you not buy the handbag or making you behave in a particular manner and making you work for like 12 hours a day or any of that. That's not how I operate, right? And that's not my work. But the work does require you to feel into the body and be in the body. And that can be very, very challenging and jarring for some runaways, especially when they just feel like, oh, this is too much. I've gone to a, like, I've just reached my cap. So I'm used to most runaways like hearing me talking about this work and like they self-select and they go, no, this is, I'm just not ready for that. That's one of the first things that they'll say. They'll say, I'm not ready for you, Van. I'll see you in another cycle. Why? Because most runaways are much more, they know it's not even an understanding. They still running away. They need to, you know, that the idea of feeling into the body is so scary for them, right? So, and with that also comes impulsive spending, because remember, when you're feeling some kind of way and you're in avoidance mode, most times you have to use money to avoid, right? Things cost money, travel costs money, partying costs money, going to the bar costs money, using food as a way to avoid feeling your feelings costs money, grocery bills, right? Um, Going to the movies costs money. All of those things cost money, right? So most runaways will find themselves impulsively spending. And that could also lead to the constant creation of debt, the constant cycles of debt. It's like anything to never feel your emotions, right? Anything to never feel what you are feeling, anything to never be in your body. That is really the motto of the runaway. And I mean, like I said, guys, I'm also the secondary archetype of the runaway. So truly understand this archetype, right? Just like how I understand the destroyer archetype. I get it. It is so, so uncomfortable to deal with those emotions. So anything to never have to feel that, right? And sometimes the impulsive spending is also like finding yourself amongst friends, using people, quote unquote, tribes, people, not to have to feel your own emotions. So if you don't have money, finding yourself surrounded by tons and tons of friends. Maybe you feel super connected to those people, but runaways have a lovely and amazing way of being able to feel at home, even at times, with like amongst 100 people and just be there and be swept up in the like in the wave of everything, mainly not because they actually tapped into that wave, but because that wave is the current thing that is taking them away from themselves and feeling their discomfort, that is taking them away from having to deal with anything, right? So that is the biggest challenge of the runaway. And of course, it's just being a huge fear of being around money, having money, making money, all of that. The other thing is runaways can also, here's an interesting thing. A runaway can also use work to run away. So it's not always negative things, right? So runaways can be very smart and be like, okay, my drug of choice is work. So they can be workaholics. Why? Because work also takes you away from feeling into your body. So anything that works, anything that stops you from chilling out and being in your body. And most runaways will tell you that, oh, I just couldn't be, like, I don't know how to rest. I don't know how to slow down, right? The idea of resting, slowing down, even if whatever they're busy with doesn't lead to more money, as long as it keeps them busy. The aim is be busy, don't be in the body, don't feel anything, don't deal with the uncomfortable things, right? And so as a result, runaways also avoid family gatherings, right? So when it comes, let's talk about the disconnection. Okay. So the runaway has limit. I'm going to remove that there. The runaway has a limited capacity for relationships, right? They have a tendency to run from challenging situations or conversations that really impact them emotionally, and also so relationships. So as soon as friendships get uncomfortable, runaways change friends, right? Like if it becomes too real, it gets uncomfortable. Oh, it's been great. And most runaways will may struggle to maintain friendships that are like from childhood or their teens or even varsity years. They really, really struggle with that, right? Because for them, it's all about running. They make friends easily as well, right? Because it's really, really easy to make friends easily. But then in relationships, it's also very easy for a runaway to where, and this is where it's different from the sweet one. The sweet one will mirror someone and have resentment towards them and overgive and give and give and give and be like, oh my God, I'm giving, because the sweet one is looking for validation. The runaway can use relationships as just another way to escape from themselves. So then they start to do whatever the other person in the relationship does as a way to run from themselves and escape from themselves. Huge, huge difference, the underlying cause between the runaway and the sweet one. So the runaway can just go with the flow, and then one day when it becomes hard, the sweet one can definitely stick to struggle, right? They can do struggle relationships, struggle marriage, struggle whatever. Runaways challenged by that. As soon as the going gets tough, the runaway is going to be like, deuces to you, it's been very, very real. So then they'll go look for the next relationship. So, and that's what will sustain them until that also becomes tough. Then they go to the next one and the next one. So with family, obviously you can't just keep changing families. It's not like you're going to get a new mom, a new dad, new siblings. They just avoid coming to family functions. You may see them once a year at a wedding, at a funeral, if even, right? You may never even know where their children go to school. You may not, they may be, and I have seen this, guys, not a joke and not a lie. A runaway can literally, you can see, they can literally move to another location and never give any family members their address. So family members will not know how to get in touch with them. They won't know where they live, nothing, not even their own parents, right? And a lot of that is to protect themselves, to preserve themselves, because they never had, they don't, when they are fully in their runaway archetype, they don't know how, what do I say? Screen sharing is paused, sorry. I keep moving this around. Do you guys see this? I'm sharing. Sorry, can you guys see that? It's saying screen sharing is paused and resume. Okay, don't worry. There we go. Yeah, so they have a limited capacity for relationships because of that. So you never see them. They can literally hide their location from family members. Or failing that, if they can't move, runaways will use substances or some addiction. They are the most prone to addiction, right? So they will run towards alcohol, gambling, drugs, all sorts of addiction, right? Food addictions, because all it is how do I leave my body? How do I leave the situation? So when they find it very, very difficult to run away from family dynamics, the only way that they will be able to run is to literally figure out how to leave their bodies and numb the body. And they will use substances and other events to do that, right? But if they can and they have the capacity to leave home, they will. And newsflash, one of the things I say in the book is the runaway absolutely needs to move out of home. Out of all the archetypes, the runaway is the one archetype that has got to leave home, especially if they have not done their own healing work, right? And they have not done and other family members have not done their own healing work, because all they're doing when they are in that environment of trauma and all of that is they just keep taking on things until eventually the only way that they're going to have to cope is through self-medication. So for the runaway, most runaways, when they are not showing up for family gatherings, family functions, it's unconsciously self-preservation, right? They are just preserving themselves. And I think that has to be honored, honestly. Okay, so how does the healing journey begin? Glad you asked. So how do you go from being the runaway to the grounded seeker, right? So the first thing is realizing that there is a need for change, right? Most runaways, because you can keep running, and some runaways, I like to think that some of us have really great habits of running away, and they look so nice to the outside world. And they are so nice. They're so pleasant and so awesome. Like my way of running was just to travel. And that was great, being on the Caribbean, being everywhere. So what is it that got me to change my financial habits so that I could no longer run anymore? Because I mean, I was traveling, I was living abroad, I was like externally, everything looked good. Well, quite simple, physical symptoms. I started having issues like panic attacks, right? My body started fighting back. And I started having panic attacks and I started having digestive issues. Like my body just stopped digesting food, right? Stopped digesting a lot of things. And I was just like, what the hell is happening? So that then had me really, like my body was calling me back home. And that's what then made me come back into my body. And for most runaways, they will have very similar stories that, like, I had a panic attack, I had a breakdown, I had something happen. It will tend to be very, very physical. Some runaways, it's complete financial crisis. I had no option. I declared bankruptcy. I did this, I did that. So it's often like a major catastrophic thing that does get us to come back into our bodies to say, this doesn't work. But what I'm hoping is that people that are listening to this, and you know you're a runaway archetype, runaways, we know ourselves, right? You don't wait for it to get to that point, like some of us, right? You're able to say, okay, this is a problem. I can see it. I am running away. And then you start to make the changes, right? So then the second step, when usually this happens for the runaway, is that you then start to go into the body. You start allowing yourself to feel your emotions, and you allow yourself to stay present in the body, right? And that's where the turning point really happens. That's where the shift starts to happen, because that's when you start introducing safety into your nervous system and into your body. So one of the things that I want to say is that a huge turning point for the runaway also is just sometimes, especially, is also family deciding sometimes, because runaways, their relationship with money does tend to go up, down, and family sometimes often has to step in to support them. It's very similar to the eternal child, but very different, right? Because they are adulting, they are just running away, they can do all the things, right? The runaway is capable. The eternal child just doesn't have full capacity, and we'll talk about that, right? The runaway, but then sometimes family members step in, and it's also another turning point is when family stops stepping in to bail out the runaway, right? When there's no more rehab, when there's no more helping them financially because they just quit a job in the middle, or just out of the blue because they didn't like what was happening. When all of those things start to happen, including family, the runaway then has a rude awakening. And to be honest, most people love runaways, right? Most people do love the runaway archetype because it looks carefree. Most runaways they look like the spirit child. They look very carefree. Oh, another thing, runaways may tend to use like spiritual talk as well to run away, right? And they may like be looking for saving in some of those things, not necessarily trying to reclaim their power by using those modalities to heal themselves, but waiting for something outside of themselves to heal them so that they don't have to do the actual inner work, right? Huge, huge distinction, especially in the self-development sphere and in the spiritual sphere, right? So the runaway archetype is a very interesting archetype. Especially because most people do love the runaway archetype, right? Where the eternal child is very triggering, the runaway is seen as a free spirit, and we all love free spirit. So the first thing is to start practices like meditation, movement, or introspection exercises. Actually, meditation, like if you do Vipassana meditation, that's an introspection exercise, right? So really, so one of the things is about bringing your attention to the body. So it's a mind-body awareness. So one of the first things for me that changed everything was a huge breakthrough for me and helped me tremendously was Vipassana, right? It was the ability to actually sit down for 10 days, stop running, and feel into my body, feel the sensations inside the body, feel the sensations outside the body, and start. I didn't know my own emotions. I didn't know what shame felt like in my body. I had an intellectual understanding of shame, an intellectual understanding of guilt, but because I was never in my body, I didn't know what these emotions felt like. I couldn't tell you what emotion I was feeling because I was so busy running away. So Vipassana helped me do that, right? And then doing yoga, and then I introduced breathwork meditation, and then EFT tapping. I did a lot of somatic work, right? All of that helped me tremendously when it came to healing and to start moving into being the grounded seeker. And most runaways, you'll notice when they start to move into the grounded seeker, more and more into the grounded seeker archetype, they prioritize the body. They are the ones that will come and teach us about breath work. They'll be coming up with new yoga modalities. They'll be learning all these new things around the body. Why? Because their core healing was about coming into the body. So when they learn that, they tend to then become healers who tend to incorporate the body because their healing absolutely needed the body, right? So somatic healing is really, really key. So one of the things I say in page 154 is one of the things I had to do as a runaway archetype was to learn to be in my body. And the most transformative tool for me was Vipassana because for 10 days, I could no longer run away. I could no longer overspend. I could no longer use money and credit cards to pretend that I wasn't feeling the things I was feeling. I couldn't go out to movies and restaurants. I had to sit and be in my body and get to really, really understand what was going on within my body, right? So a lot of somatic work, right? Which is why for me in the Money Magic course and even in the Bank Account Challenge, I use a lot of EFT tapping. I use a lot of breath work, right? With the Money Magic course, I use a lot of breath work. I do my own guided meditations that I record for clients where we go into the body. Almost everything taps into the body. Even when we're in the ancestral realm, dealing with Akashic records, we're bringing light into various areas of the body. We're really focusing on the body, right? And I do a lot of EFT tapping, breath work. I do just a lot, right? And we talk a lot about pleasure on my retreats. I do a lot of like bringing in pleasure, but physical pleasure, because that is where a lot of the healing is, especially for the runaway archetype. It also helps all the other archetypes. So the runaways healing and learning how to heal the body ends up benefiting almost all the other, it ends up benefiting, not almost, it ends up benefiting all the archetypes. Definitely benefits the runaway, definitely without a shadow of a doubt, starts to help the fixer also come down into the body. It helps the eternal child start to unfreeze, right? So the runaways start to understand the mind-body connection at a deep, deep level. Okay, so who is the grounded seeker? The grounded seeker is the healed archetype or the golden archetype of the runaway, right? So they are focused on stability and presence, because the grounded seeker, to go into your grounded seeker archetype, you go all the way into the body. You learn the body. You start to understand what's happening in your body. You start to understand what safety feels like. You start to work with the body. And then it feels nice being in your body, you know? And that's when you can like sit for hours in meditation. That's when you're able to just be. It's no longer scary looking at your bank account, all of these. Do me, I'm gonna mute you. Okay, so it's no longer scary looking at your bank account. It's no longer scary dealing with money as much. You may have fear, but you know how to come back into your body and just deal with yourself, right? And that's why the grounded seeker is so awesome, because you now teach the rest of us how to do that, right? So I say, in page 273, I explain it this way. I say, while the runaway's role is to process the trauma in the family, the grounded seeker's role is to teach every family member to acknowledge their own feelings and to take responsibility for their own emotional well-being and healing. Once the runaway begins to heal, they learn how to be the grounded seeker. They start metabolizing family trauma, and their healing has wide ramifications for the family, which results in a visible shift in the family's relationship dynamics. So where the runaway would run away from family because they were just feeling too much and they didn't want to have to deal with that drama and have to feel into it, the grounded seeker is all about being in the body, right? And they've now learned how to deal with family dynamics. So when your mom or your dad acts up, you know how to set those boundaries. You know how to step away from all of that, right? And that's what makes the grounded seeker so interesting and so powerful. So that is like really your core strength as the runaway, is that once you start to heal, you come in and you're able to easily see, oh, this is the trauma. Because remember, you can sense people's stuff. You can feel it. You're an empath. You can be like, oh, this is the trauma. This is a trauma that so feels. And I am now trying, my role is now to metabolize it and to help them see that this is their work, that this is the work that you need to go do, right? So one of the things for that to happen, like one of the things that really is a core characteristic of the grounded seeker, unlike the runaway, is that they embody their teachings. They feel it in their bodies. They know it like they know it. They feel safe in the body. They feel safety. Everything is about the body, right? So they don't just talk and theorize something. When they talk about, I feel abundant, the grounded seeker is feeling the abundance, really feeling it in the body. It's not an intellectual thing, you know? They're going to be like, oh, I can feel it in the body, and they can explain it to you. Why? Because that's the healing that they needed to do, right? They have a deep sense of self-awareness and also financial awareness and emotional resistance, because remember, as they heal and metabolizing the trauma and integrating trauma, what often happens is that they are starting to reduce their anesthetic load because they are busy processing all the things that are stuck in the body. It's almost like that machine that was full and was grinding corn and was constantly grinding corn. Now they have gone like, okay, I have boundaries. Boom, I'm not running away. I'm going to take time out. So they're putting a stopper on that machine and they just grinding away at the remaining corn. And by the time they finish grounding, there's like that machine can function seamlessly because there's so little corn to be busy milling away, right? Or grinding away. So that's why, so they have a lot of emotional resistance. They don't get as easily overwhelmed by things. One of the things before I started doing a lot of my work on safety and getting into my body, everything overwhelmed me, especially in entrepreneurship. The idea of writing a book, I could not have written a book. I now write books, right? Like I've written Hard Mind and Money, the Next Level You Woman Money Journal. I've written What's Your Money Personality, because starting a project and looking at how big it was used to be so overwhelming because I didn't have the resilience, right? And I was already like at 4 with my allostatic load. It was too much. But once I started to do my healing, I could hold more, right? My nervous system had capacity, I could hold more, and I could easily breathe through things and pace myself. But when you're operating from a space where like already your nervous system is just overloaded, right? Your allostatic load is so high, everything is overwhelming. You have a short fuse. You can't imagine doing something. You can't hold many things at once. You feel easily overwhelmed. You need lots and lots of sleep, lots and lots of rest. You're lethargic, all of those things, right? So that's something to really understand. And I think that's one of the big things about healing that I love is also just how much it also does for the body. It gives the body that rest as well, so you move differently. So yeah, that is the big contrast between the runaway and the grounded seeker, is that you feel you have done the inner work internally at a somatic level and a body level. So you're no longer looking for safety externally, you're looking for safety internally. And you start to trust yourself. Why? Because you feel safe, right? So it feels like you can trust yourself. And remember, self-trust is also so very interesting. Self-trust is something that isn't just coming from the fact that you are now feeling more safe. It's also coming from the fact that you are starting to follow through on projects. When things get hard, you're able to sit with the difficulty. It doesn't mean it's easy, but there's an ease in that because you're able to surrender, you're able to be in the body, you're able to breathe through it. You're not making it harder than it has to be, because you're able to just be with it and metabolize it and accept it. And through that, start to move through things a lot faster. So there's no longer like a lot of shame of all the things that you've left unfinished. There's no like projects that are unfinished in your wake. When you leave a project, you leave it because it no longer resonates with you. You've had a conversation with yourself. It's not because you don't feel safe, right? Or because you are feeling powerless with regards to this project. Huge, huge difference. And as that happens, you start to build your muscle of trust, especially when money is concerned. You start to see, oh, I can make X amount in business and I can stay with it. Okay, like, wow, this was a really hard year, but I got through it. Then the next year, oh, if I could get through that year, it was hard. Maybe I can get through this year. You start to trust yourself. You start to feel more and more powerful, and you start to stick with things. And that's when you start to see results and long-term results as well, right? Hope that makes sense to you guys. So that's where the self-trust is coming from. As you pay, and for me, it was huge. I remember when I started paying off debt, slowly, it wasn't going as fast as I wanted, right? Because in my head, I was like, okay, I'm just going to give myself 5 years to pay off $60,000 in debt. Paid off my $60,000 in debt in 3.5 years, right? But at the time, I was just like, I remember the first year that I stuck to looking at my bank account, doing a lot of the work that I teach in the bank account challenge. And then I think I had paid off $10,000. Even though it wasn't like $25,000 or even half of that, I was very, very excited because I was like, oh my gosh, if I can pay off $10,000, I can pay off another 10,000, right? And then I can pay off another 20,000. Oh my gosh, then I could see it. You start to see that, oh my gosh, I'm capable of this. And you start to trust yourself and start to tap into your own power. Ken. So what are some key practices for the grounded seeker? I've already shared some practices that you can do, but one of the things is to focus most of your attention on coming back into your body, right? Having emotional curiosity. So it's not just that I'm being in the body, but really sitting with everything, not trying to change it, not trying to run away from it, not trying to instantly transmute it, trying to instantly reframe it, but becoming curious, allowing your emotions to come up, and really feeling your emotions. So for a lot of Money Magic students, that will be lesson 23 in the Money Magic course around safety. So really, really coming home into your body. That's the lesson on safety. If this is resonating with you, go check out lesson 23 on safety. And also, if you're in the Money Magic course, huge part of that is going to be lesson 1, feeling, releasing emotions in the body, releasing memories in the body, right? So becoming curious. But if you're not in the course, you give yourself that space of curiosity and giving yourself space to allow your emotions to rise. So when things are happening, you take a breath and you feel into your body and you say, what is it that I'm feeling? And maybe because you're a runaway, just like me, you may not notice what feelings you're feeling, right? And I talk more about that in page 276 and page 277 of the book, so you can read that as well. So you may not know what it is that you're feeling, and that means that maybe you have to sit longer than other people and become more curious and journal and just be in it, right? So really, really developing emotional curiosity and feeling certain things. When you feel yourself not wanting to open your bills, not wanting to look at your bank account, not wanting to talk to a financial advisor about money, really feeling into the body and asking yourself, why do I feel this way? Where am I feeling it? What am I feeling in this moment? That's curiosity. And also, again, this is just nutrition, meditation, yoga, right? So for me, I think all of this, the beauty of when we do all of this is that we also have a mindset shift, right? As you start to feel safe in the body. It also, we aim not to feel super grateful with money. Like that's not the aim. Most people are like, oh, I want to feel like I love money. I feel grateful with money. I feel grateful for money, all of that. No, you will get your shifts, I promise, like the most mind-blowing financial shifts by going from fear to neutral with money. Instead of feeling fearful around money, just feeling more neutral with money, feeling more like calm around money. That's a huge thing, right? And also and practicing calmness, like really practicing to regulate your nervous system when it comes to your finances, budgeting, spending. And that's where, for me, the bank account challenge comes in, right? Anyone who's a runaway, I would really recommend my course, the bank account challenge course. Not just the first, because like in the course, like I have like many different modules. All of them are 5 days long, right? I think right now there's about 5 or 6 different modules, 5 days long, but it's all about going into the body and being able to first have that introductory relationship with money and your finances and learning to feel your emotions around money. This course is just perfect for anyone that is a runaway, right? So if you want to learn more about the course, you can definitely message me. We can connect. I will hop on a call with you. Literally, this is where I started. It's where my shift started to really happen, especially because I was doing running at levels, like country levels, right? Like I was moving continents, etc. So I needed to just get into the body and feel safe with money, right? So looking at your bank account every day, observing your breathing coming into your body, these are some steps that you can take to really, really start to change your finances if you know that you're a runaway archetype, right? And so one of the things that I would say is healing the sense of unsafety it's three-pronged, right? It's about feeling safe in the body. So when you're going, in conclusion, it's basically there's 3 elements to safety, right? A lot of the Money Magic students can tell you it's about feeling safe in the body so that you can build financial trust in yourself as you start to feel safe enough to hold more money, to be with money. And that is what helps you feel more empowered. And one of the easiest ways to also get to empowerment is establishing safe routines and structures to feel more grounded daily. So you do your yoga, you do your meditations, but you look at your bank accounts every day, you do all of that, which is why I love the bank account challenge course or the Money Magic course, because you can have like a routine every day. I do a meditation, I do breath work, I do EFT. You have something to do that forms part of your routine and can ground you, right? Okay, and when you start doing all of that, right, that's when you start noticing that you'll have, as you start moving into your grounded seeker archetype, you'll start to notice that you no longer run from facing challenges, like I mentioned. So you'll increase your income, your savings and investments increase easily, right? Because you're no longer spending randomly to run away from yourself. You're no longer using alcohol, you're no longer using drugs, you're no longer using travel, you're no longer using movies, food, etc., all of that to run away from yourself. So you're able to actually start spending in alignment with your values, and that is what starts to increase your savings and investments. And obviously, because you're not running away and continuing to spend however much it costs for you to not feel your emotions, you're not going, oh, I'm going to retail therapy today, I had such a hard day at work, instead of like sitting with, and now you've learned that you can sit with the hard day at work, you can breathe, you can do breath work, you can feel into your body, you can do all of that stuff and just hold it. You're no longer going off and spending money willy-nilly to make yourself feel better. So that also helps you get out of debt, and it leads to decreased debt, right? So in closing, I'm going to say to you guys, consider what resonates with you with the journey from the runaway to the grounded seeker. Share in the chat section. Again, I'm going to be answering Q&As on here, so feel free to share, unmic yourself, any of those things, right? And identify from today's class, you can look at some of the action steps. Which are some of the action steps you're doing, and which are the action steps that you need to do to start moving into the grounded seeker archetype? And then reflect on how this archetype transformation can reshape your life. The book has so many more exercises, you guys, like than what I'm sharing here. So yeah, go to the book, right? And then, yeah, it's an ongoing process, hey? It's like I said, we will go back and forth, but the aim of understanding who we are in terms of our archetypes and doing the inner work is that we can quickly catch ourselves when we are operating strictly from our shadow archetype of the runaway, and just say, ooh, I'm now in my runaway archetype. Here, where are the resources that I have? Here's the course that I have that can help me get back to center, get back to self, so that I can continue on the path, especially where money is concerned. Okay, I'm going to stop the sharing for a minute as usual. How are you guys feeling? Write in the chat box. So hope you see, I guess you were saying yes, you can see the screen. Itumeleng, you say, is there a test one can take to determine their archetype? Read the book, right? I mean, because these are my own self-created archetypes, right? And a lot of them are just like, this book is heavily researched, guys. But most of you also know, you see in the book that my research backs up the things that have been downloaded to me. So a lot of it is just working with my ancestors and the downloads around that when it comes to our archetypes. So right now, I haven't come up with a test, Itumeleng. It's something that my publishers are asking me to do. I don't know how to do that. I'm waiting for the ancestors guide, something to tell me how would I make people take this test. I think through doing these masterclasses, I'm also seeing that there are common themes that I can have people take tests on. I just have to maybe re-listen to the masterclass to be able to know which questions to ask and how each archetype would answer that, you know? I think that would help a lot. Lenina, you say, I've been asking around for somatic practitioners in Cape Town, but no luck so far, only TRE. Do you find runaways who literally run away from healing in a stop-start fashion because progress, success itself feels unsafe? Yeah, I mean, that's like a very typical runaway thing. Yeah, all the time. That's like it, because like the runaway can get overwhelmed by feeling into their bodies, right? Other archetypes, like, for example, fixers are very interesting archetypes, guys. Fixers like are very, very logical. I know when I'm dealing with fixer clients, because a fixer client will say, I will wake up every day for the next 6 months at 4 a.m. and do the meditations nonstop. They will do that nonstop. They will do it every day, stick to it, because a fixer is very like logical. They sit down, they go, I'm going to test this thing. I'm going to test whatever Vangile is saying. I'm going to test this course. And of course, because they're fixers, they're going to have, they end up having extraordinary breakthroughs and just living their best lives and praising it to the high heavens, right? Because that's how a fixer is wired, right? They are very like, this is how things go and this is how they do things. Runaways, we get very overwhelmed by healing. So we do stop, start. It's scary. It also feels unsafe when we go beyond our money set point. We can't hold more money. So you make more money. You find a way to get rid of money. You start making crazy business decisions. You manifest emergencies. The runaway is definitely the archetype that is like, that tends to go more in circles than the other archetypes. They go make money, lose money, make money, lose money, make money, lose money. Runaways do tend to do that because for them, it's scary to hold it, right? Their challenge is definitely the holding. Fixers, guys, like fixer archetypes are different. Like I said before, right? I told you guys how one of the banks in South Africa brought me in and they were just like, yeah, they understood, they read the book and they were like, our target market is the fixer. We understand the fixer. They are 0.7% of the population. They then bought the book for everyone else in the department, and they were like, read this book. This helps us understand the fixers, because fixers have a very, very interesting way of operating. So if you're going to look at, if you're comparing your journey, I don't even, right? I do the work in the Money Magic course. I don't expect to work it in the same way. So we all have different ways of approaching the healing work. Great question, Lenina. I like that. Hope, you say you stepped out for another commitment. Awesome, no problems. Itumeleng, you say, I resonate a lot with what you said about the runaway when it comes to running my business. However, I don't have the same challenges with money. Ah, yes, nice. It's possible, Itumeleng. Then you say, yes, I get overwhelmed quite a lot, not from situations in general, but from overthinking and making things unnecessarily difficult. I'm quite money savvy. Okay. It's also possible that you are a fixer, right? So you could have a primary archetype that is a fixer, or a different archetype, or a sweet one archetype, right? And then you have a secondary archetype that is the runaway. So in some areas you run away, in some areas you're just 100%, right? Because remember, we have a primary and secondary archetype. Zamogutle, you say, yes, I'd also like to complete a test as I'm confused between runaway and flight. Well, if you're in the runaway archetype, your main way of operating is to go into flight mode, right? So, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to expand on what you mean, Zamagutle, by your confusion? Maybe we can clear it up right now before I end the session. Let me know. Feel free to type in the chat box. Does anyone have any other comments? I'm about to wrap up today's class. Wow, we did it, guys. Despite being on the road, traveling, all of the things, showed up to the session. And I think it went well. I really, really am loving these classes. Okay, I'm going to do the last part. So back to screen sharing. If you guys are interested in the book, so this last part is all about how you can work with me, where you can get the book, right? So this is the book. If you're in South Africa, look at Take a Lot. I don't know if Take a Lot delivers to other countries, right, outside of South Africa, but the book is definitely on Amazon. So Amazon delivers internationally. It's also in all major bookstores and ebook stores internationally. So you can get the book in Canada, you can get it in the US, you can go to Barnes and Noble in the US, you can go to Indigo Books in Canada, you can go to various bookstores, right? And to get there, you just go to Wealthy. Usually I have like the links here, right? I forgot to add the link. It's wealthy-money.com/money personality. Just go to wealthy-money.com and you'll see all the information about, if you're in a particular country, about where you can get your book. In South Africa, the book is also available at Exclusive Books. It's available at Bargain Books. It's available at Wordsworth, right? And you can also support an independent bookstore, the Book Circle Capital. You can go to bookcapital.co.za. If you're in South Africa, they deliver very fast and they will treat you, they will give you great treatment, right, as an individual and work with you. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I'm not interested in the online courses, I don't want to do any of that, I want to work with you one-on-one. People have been asking me a lot about that, about one-on-one coaching and working with me individually. I do have one spot left still in my coaching practice, right? I'm doing a lot of work around visibility and just being in the body. So again, lots of somatic practices, working with you if you're a runaway to hold that space for you so that you can get to a space where you're feeling safe, being visible, being seen, just allowing people to think whatever they want to think about you, pricing your products and services, really up leveling and holding your expansion, right? We do a lot of breath work, meditations. We look at ancestral money trauma, really healing that at a nervous system level, right? And starting to change that, starting to change the way that we relationship with money and how we go after our goals. So I really work more as I'm your coach, but also like an accountability partner as well, right? So I do 4 months one-on-one coaching with you every 2 weeks. So twice, like 1 week, we skip a week, every other week, we have a coaching session, right? And it's all about really working on your particular income goal. So you set an income goal and we work to make that income goal a reality, right? Sometimes clients come to me and they're like, I just want to fall in love with my company again. I have one client like that. And some clients are coming to me to work with me because they want to go from a full-time job to being a full-time entrepreneur. So then we do that work. So we do 2 hours every other week on Zoom. We do in-depth discussions, guidance, we do meditations. We really do a lot of the somatic work. In between coaching sessions, you have journal prompts and meditations, sometimes EFT tapping. So after the session, I'm going to be recording a special EFT tapping script and video for a client, just for them, that my other clients don't have, because that's what they need to be able to keep growing and changing and up leveling, right? So, and I talk to my clients every single day, every weekday, from Monday to Friday, where we do weekly check-ins where we do daily check-ins in between coaching calls, right? So you have me on that journey for 4 months. So that's what you get with this. And you also have guided meditations, some from the Money Magic course. Some of the guided meditations are also guided meditations, just like how I'm recording for this client, the EFT tapping, unique to you based on what you're going through, right? So this course is for you if you're looking, this coaching is for you, one-on-one coaching is for you if you're looking to align your financial goals with personal values, but also if you're looking to just up level at a radical pace, right? If you're looking to do the inner work and you want someone to work with you on a daily basis, essentially, for 4 months, and you want that high level support, you're done doing it on your own. You've probably tried doing it on your own. You see that, nope, it's not working, or it's taking you too long. And you know that if I had the support, I could easily up level and break through quickly, then this course is for you, right? If you're looking to increase your pricing and you've been struggling to increase your pricing because you're scared of judgment and you know that you could earn more either in corporate or even as an entrepreneur, but you feel like you've been at a particular money set point and you're not moving, then this is definitely for you, no matter how high it is, right? I have clients who come to me making millions and they just want to make more because they feel like they've just hit a plateau, right? And also just to break unhealthy money habits and build a healthy relationship with money, or even a better relationship with money. Maybe you're already making a lot of money, and you're wanting to have an incredible relationship with money where you're actually now building generational wealth, and you're wanting to have those conversations with confidence, with ease, all of that. And you want to be able to hold that expansion. And of course, to shine unapologetically, right? So your investment, I charge $10,000 in full upfront for people that want to work with me. Upfront, it's $10,000, 176,000 Rand, 464 Rand. That's what I charge upfront if people want to, if you want to coach with me. But that is actually discounted, because if you want to do, there's also a monthly payment plan, right? So that's the discounted price. The monthly payment plan, if you choose to work with me over 4 months, you can pay in 4-month installments at the beginning of every month over 4 months, $3,000 a month, or 52,939 Rand per month for 4 months, right? But the difference is that just gives you pay an extra $2,000 or 35,293 Rand by doing the monthly payment plan. I do give a discount to people because you're making an investment and you're making it quite fast if you pay in full upfront, right? So let me know if this is resonating with you. Post in the comment section and I will reach out to you. You can also email me. Here's my email. If you're in this class, it's mainly because you've already registered for the class. So just click reply to any of my emails. We'll hop on a discovery call. If you're hearing about any of my courses and want to know more about the courses, email me. We'll hop on a discovery call. I'll tell you about all my courses. The bank account challenge is priced differently. It's at $799 US once off. The money, and that's lifetime access for now. At the end of November, this is the first time I'm taking away lifetime access in my courses. We'll never take away lifetime access on the Money Magic course. I'm saying it publicly because it's just not possible. That course requires my lifetime access. The Money Magic course is $6,999. So, and that also has payment plans. It has a 20-month payment plan, a 10-month payment plan. So if you've been listening to this, watching the Money Magic podcast, and you want to learn more about that, just click reply or let me know in the chat. Leave your phone number. I'll reach out to you. Right. See what you guys are saying in the comment section. Can I just stop sharing the screen in the chat box? Zamagutle, you say, let me do my homework in the book. Thanks, Vangile. Pleasure, Zamagutle. Itumalang, you're saying you're doing really great work. Really, really love these sessions and will really benefit from the somatic work. It's a pleasure, Itumalang. Sharon, you say, thank you for the session. Inward journey is deep work. I have to leave now. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you, guys. Okay, so that's it for today's session, guys. So Zamagule says, Vangile, you're truly God sent. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to next week, sending you love and light. Pleasure, Zamagule. Tembagazi, you say, thank you so much again for the session. Thank you, Tembagazi. Okay, guys, thank you so much for showing up today. It's a Thursday evening. I know it's nearing the end of the year. People are tired. I understand. So I look forward to seeing you in the next 2 sessions. We only have 2 sessions left. Can you believe it? Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Again, feel free to share when I post this, the replay up in the Wealthy Money Academy. Share your insights, put everything in the comment section. Let's have a discussion. Have a fantastic day further, right? We have 2 more masterclasses. Cheerio!